afternoon. I would like to welcome our stakeholders who are tuning in to audio broadcast and those who are here with us in Washington, D.C. to observe our meeting in person. This is the public session of the Financial Accounting Foundation's Board of Trustees meeting. In today's meeting, we will hear reports from the FASB Chair, the GASB Chair, the FAF Executive Director, and the FAF Treasurer. We're also going to be getting reports about the latest activities of the GASAC, the Governmental Accounting Standards Advisory Council, the PCC, the Private Company Council, and the Trustees Standard Setting Process Oversight Committee. But before we get to these reports, I would like to take a moment to recognize Dr. Christine Bodison. Christine is going to complete her second term on the FASB board on June 30th, 2026. Christine joined the FASB on July 1st, 2016, and was reappointed by the FAF trustees in 2020 to a second term. Christine is an award-winning professor and researcher with broad knowledge of accounting issues with special expertise in the areas of financial statement analysis and valuation. During her tenure, Christine spearheaded a series of 3 research symposiums, which the FASB co-hosted with the Accounting Research Center of the University of Chicago Business School, engaging the academic community on broader scale. We thank Christine for her incredibly dedicated service and thoughtful contributions to the FASB over a 10-year period and wish her the best of luck in the years ahead. Please accept this gift, which is going to come your way on behalf of the trustees, and thank you again. I hope you got room in your luggage, Christine. I would also like to recognize and thank Jeff Praviti for his service to the GASB as vice chair. Where is Jeff? There you are, Jeff. His term will end June 30th, 2026. Jeff began his service to the GASB on July 1st, 2016, and was appointed as vice chair a year later. Prior to joining the GASB, he served in a variety of roles for more than 2 decades at what is now known as S&P Global Ratings, a small organization you may have heard of. Most recently serving as the managing director and project leader in the agency's risk program. During his tenure at the GASB, Jeff invested a very significant amount of time engaging with the user community. He was integral in connecting staff members with investors, rating agencies, and others in the municipal bond community. He also led efforts to ensure our project communications were clear for those users within the context of their work. We want to extend also our very sincere gratitude for his exemplary service and insightful contributions to the GASB. We also do have a token of appreciation for you that we'd like to present to you, Jeff, with our very, very sincerest appreciation for all the work you have done and your dedication to the GASB over the years. Again, I really hope you have room in your luggage for that. As we mark the completion of Jeff's service, I have the pleasure of announcing the appointment of Jackie Reck. Where's Jackie?
She's on the screen.
Oh, Jackie, you're on the screen. I think I cannot see this far ahead, but I see your name on the screen to a 1-year term as vice chair of the GASB. Jackie has served on the GASB since 2022 and was reappointed for a second term in 2025. As vice chair, she has very big shoes to fill. She will work closely with the GASB chair, Joel Black, sitting here to my left, to further enhance GASB's outreach to stakeholders on current topics in governmental accounting and financial reporting. Jackie is an accomplished academic. She's a professor at the University of South Florida and former Associate Dean for Financial Management and Academic Affairs for the Muma College of Business. She has published extensively in peer-reviewed academic journals and is the first author on the leading governmental accounting textbook, Accounting for Governmental and Nonprofit Entries. I'd like to note that this one-year appointment gives the FAF trustees flexibility to shape the future of GASB leadership team based on the skills and experience we find in the new GASB chair, who will be selected later this year and will take office on July 1st, 2027. So we are very grateful to Jackie for her ongoing contributions to the GASB and the profession. And please do join me in congratulating Jackie on her and thanking Jackie on for taking on this role. We have a lot of appointments. So at this time, I also have the pleasure of announcing several reappointments to the Private Company Council. 3 members, David, Director in okay, I'm going to get this one wrong, and please do excuse me. So David Finkelstein, Director with Singer Lewick, LLP. Bradley Hendricks, an Associate Professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and David Hoagland, an Executive Credit Officer for U.S. Bank. They all have agreed to serve additional terms, as well as our current esteemed chair, Jerry, who will continue to serve in his current role. Jerry retired in 2025 from his role as CEO of Baker Tilly US, where he was responsible for managing the assurance practice and risk management. We thank Jerry for his leadership, and David and Bradley for their continued commitment to serve on the PCC. So that was the fun part of the agenda. No, I'm kidding. Let's move on to our planned agenda, our regular agenda. So the first item of business is to approve the minutes from the board's February 24 meeting. The board minutes are in your materials. If there are no questions or statements with regard to the minutes, may I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So the minutes have been approved. And now we will move on to our reports. So I'm going to start with Chair Rich Jones for FASB.
Great. Thanks, Dahlia. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to update you in 4 general areas. One, developments in our technical agenda. The second is an update on our agenda consultation process. The third, a discussion of some of the support we're providing to our stakeholders on adoption of pending standards. And then finally, an update on our continuing post-implementation review. But before that, this will be the first of many goodbyes that we also say to Christine, because Christine's 10 years is not up yet. And through June 30th, we have lots of meetings and lots of vote. But I will start with thanking Christine, similar to Dahlia, for her very active participation over the last 10 years, and particularly helping us enhance our academic initiatives here at the board, which has been greatly appreciated. But we'll say goodbye a few more times, Christine, between now and June 30th. But moving on to developments on our technical agenda. During the quarter, we added 5 projects to our agenda: accounting for market return cash balance plans, definition of common control, accounting for commodities, projects related to hedge accounting, and then a project related to liability and equity classification. Post quarter end, we also added 3 projects, one related to the accounting for transferable non-refundable tax credits, and 2 projects related to investment companies, one dealing with the equity sales restrictions and one related to exploring private credit disclosure requirements. As far as our agenda consultation, we are continuing to move through the very important feedback we received from our stakeholders. We are still targeting, attempting to be done with all of that and bringing all of those issues back in front of our board for agenda decisions between now and the end of the fall. It is a heavy lift for our staff. They're diligently working through these items and making sure that we're paying close attention to the input we got and making sure we have a full body of research around those issues as we bring them to our board. But that's our plan. Finally, thirdly, when it comes to supporting our stakeholders as they implement new standards, next week we have a public roundtable related to the adoption of our disaggregation income statement expense project. This is a chance for us to bring in our different stakeholder groups and understand what progress are they making on adoption, how's it going, is there any accounting standard setting questions that they need answered. really because for all of us, successful adoption of our standards best serves the capital markets. And then finally, the fourth item, we are continuing to make progress on our post-implementation review related to our current expected credit loss model. We had a public roundtable a little over a week ago where we provided stakeholders an opportunity to come in and share with us their experiences with adopting the standard or using the output of that standard. That's but a small part of the input that we're gathering from our stakeholders as we go through this post-implementation review process. Our plan is to bring the results of that post-implementation review process back to the Board of Trustees, likely in the November meeting, with the issuing a final report soon thereafter. And so with that, let me turn it back to you, Dahlia, in case there's any questions.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich?
Yeah, I have a question. So Rich, you added projects on data infrastructure investments and private credit. Can you just say a little bit more about those projects and why you felt it was a good time to add them?
Sure. And part of it, we originally added it to the research agenda. And part of that was for the last few years that both of those topics and the different accounting issues associated with them have been part of the active discussions that we've been having with our stakeholders and that work that our staff has been doing. Adding them to the research agenda really provides us with an opportunity to provide added transparency to our stakeholders so they can weigh in. It turns out when it comes to data center transactions, we have two topics that the EITF is looking at, one related to power supply arrangements and one related to consideration paid to a customer that will relate to some of the issues that people have identified in that data center arrangement category. When it comes to the private credit and the broader issue of investment company accounting, that would be the two projects I referred to that we added to the technical agenda just recently related to private credit disclosures, as well as restrictions on equity securities held by investment companies. So those are two things we're looking at. And we're continuing to do outreach with stakeholders as to other matters related to investment company accounting.
Any other questions for Rich? Okay, seeing none, turn it over to the GASB chair, Joel.
Thanks, Talia. And we have one more meeting between now and June 30 to appropriately celebrate Jeff. But I did want to take a minute to say thanks to Jeff. He's had an exemplary service as the vice chair of the GASB and a board member, and really been impactful on our deliberations and our outreach. And thank you, Jeff. And we'll have more to say at our board meeting in June. My report for the quarter is summarized really by two main exposure drafts issued for public comment. The probably largest is that in March, we issued an exposure draft of a proposed standard on our infrastructure asset project, remembering that project and this proposal had two main objectives, responding to users' requests, which were to improve the carrying value on the statement of net position, for it to be more reflective of the actual condition of infrastructure assets. And then number two, to provide more information to users on how governments are maintaining or preserving their infrastructure assets. That exposure draft has a 90-day plus comment period that ends June 26th. And at that time, we'll have a series of three public forums in late June and early July to further discuss and dialogue with different stakeholders on their thoughts about the proposal. The second exposure draft we issued was on implementation guidance, specifically geared towards kind of what is or isn't and how do you present subsidies, which is a new concept included in Statement 103. As governments are implementing Statement 103 in 2026, we were getting a few questions that we have proposed implementation guidance to try to help people understand what is meant there in certain situations. That was issued in January, had a 75-day comment period that actually ended in late April. We did get a lot of responses, and in June, the board will deliberate those responses and decide how to proceed, with the hopes of issuing a final implementation guide updates as soon after June 30th as possible, so that we have as much time with it, as our stakeholders will have as much time with it to use it in their implementations. not necessarily the first quarter, but recently, but a big effort by the board was concluded in May on cybersecurity risk disclosures and pre-agenda research. In May, the board did decline to undertake a standard setting project as a result of that pre-agenda research, based largely on our view that external financial report probably wasn't the right place to disclose information here, because the result would have either been boilerplate language that was educational in nature and not useful to users, or would have created a cybersecurity disclosure conflict that added higher risk to governments about their cybersecurity posture that bad actors could use. And so the board said the external financial reporting is just not the right place for that, and did not proceed with a standard setting comment. Final thing I'd like to address is that in late March, our advisory council, the GASAC, did their annual prioritization of things that we should be working on. I'll highlight specifically the top 3 that they noted at that point in time. Number 1 being digital assets, and the board has, subsequent to that, approved the movement of that from a monitoring activity where we had it to pre-agenda research. So pre-agenda research is now underway related to that project. Their second highest rated priority was governmental fund financial statements. I believe the board, or at least I believe, that we need to wait a little bit more time since the issuance of the reporting model project and our last attempt at improving governmental funds before we start that project fresh. But it is important, and the board will start it at some point in the future. The third highest ranked item was financial reporting entity, and the team is working to pull together a pre-agenda research proposal to bring before the board in one of our next couple of meetings. There were 4 kind of next tier items that were prioritized by the GASAC. 1 already is in our monitoring activities. 1 is already in pre-agenda research. 1 related to pension OPEB deferrals, deferred inflows and outflows and their impact on expense. The board has also approved for pre-agenda research, so we're already starting to act on that. And then 1 we're going to work with the council to get more information on. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has about our activities.
I have one, Joel. So at our last meeting, you spoke about a series of videos that GASB has developed, which will help elected officials to better understand governmental statements. Can you give us an overview of those videos and how much viewership you're seeing?
Sure, Miriam, we were very excited to release those about 2 months ago, and so they've been really well received. It is a series of 16 videos that can be viewed individually or collectively. There's 3 introductory ones. The remaining 13 are all geared at one specific section of the government financial report, presented in layman's terms in order to understand what that part of the financial report is meant to provide, what information it's meant to provide, and how you as an elected official, or even a citizen, I guess, should and could interact with and use that information for decision-making. We're really thrilled with the response. We've had a number of stakeholders that have shared it, pushed it out, including the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, which are associations of elected officials. And in the first 2 months, we've had over 10,300 views of those videos, including 25% of them that viewed that video all the way to completion.
That's great. Thank you to you and your team for getting those out.
Any other questions? Manju?
Joel, in our meetings, you've talked about the use of AI at GASB. Could you please share any details about how AI is being used at GASB? And if you're able to comment, how will AI affect future standard setting activities?
Sure. Thanks, Manju. But we're using it in a lot of ways. We have versions of it like Microsoft Copilot that are available, and we've trained all of our staff on it. They're using it and finding new ways to use it to make daily processes and different administrative processes much more efficient and effective. But I'll highlight the one we're most excited about was that we're currently in a project to develop an AI agent that will essentially fully automate our financial statement research, and that the agent will be able to go out on its own, pull ACFRs from government financial reports, scrape information from the statements and text from the notes and MD&A, and directly populate a relational database without any human intervention in the process. Now, we'll have human quality control over it so that we feel good about the information, but that will make our research that helps support our standard setting process, our outreach, et cetera, much more effective and efficient, and we're excited about that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Joel? Okay, seeing none, our next report is going to be from our GASAC Chair, Rob Hamilton. Rob?
Thank you, Dahlia. So disagreeing without being disagreeable. That was a comment by a new member of our GASAC that was shared, and it was just so well captured what we're trying to do on the GASAC. We have 33 members, 33 different perspectives, so there will be agreement, but it is so vital for it to occur in a manner that is conducive to discussion, so that the council can provide a full range of perspectives to the board. It was just so pleasing to hear that from one of our new members to grasp that as part of the ethos of our council so quickly. Turning to my report, which is on page 156 of our materials, and I'm going to cover the highlights. We had 25 members attending our March 23rd, 24th meeting in Norwalk, including all 4 new members. Weather did play a role for some members not being able to attend. The discussion topics, some of which Joel covered earlier, were revenue and expense recognition, going concern uncertainties, and severe financial stress. In particular, in that one, we discussed the tentative board decisions around going concern and survey results of what that term means to stakeholders. Lots of discussions around severe financial stress. A helpful visual diagram of cars going over a cliff was provided by staff to facilitate the discussion, representing different conditions a government could be in and when disclosure would be required. The visual was very, very helpful to frame the discussion. We also discussed a review of the ballot draft of the infrastructure assets exposure draft, which Joel talked about earlier. The results of the pre-agenda research on cybersecurity risk disclosure, again, as Joel shared a little bit earlier. Post-implementation review of statement number 75, accounting of financial reporting for post-implementation benefit or post-employment benefits other than pensions. And then the pre-agenda research on pensions and OPEB, the effects of deferred outflows and inflows of resources on expense. The last topic we discussed was gap structure pre-agenda research and the draft discussion memorandum, which is intended to seek broad stakeholder feedback on the potential feasibility of a single authority gap structure and how such a structure could be operationalized. Consistent with each of our meetings, we have a topic set aside for emerging issues, where members bring forward issues that they believe may warrant GASB action and trying to surface those for the board. Some of the highlights included digital assets, environmental credits, and presentation of name, image, and likeness agreement funds in financial statements. Joel talked about it earlier, but we had our annual prioritization exercise, which is an event that occurs in our first meeting of each calendar year, where our members are encouraged to go back to their constituency groups and prioritize up to 6 items that they believe would be their priorities for the GASB to take on as potential projects, and Joel covered those earlier. The takeaways that I had from those were there's some consistency with our past priorities. For our top 5, they were all topics that were highly rated in 2025, but as Joel noted, the responsiveness from the board to those priorities that have been raised by the GASAC. We also received a report from the Financial Accounting Foundation and Erin Hill. She provided a brief overview of the FAF, how it supports the GASB and the FASB, and then shared about upcoming changes in FAF, GASB, and FASB members. Joel provided a report from the GASB chair. He noted that the technical plan for the first third of 2026 had been approved by the GASB and no new projects were added. He also discussed the issuance of statement number 105, subsequent events, and then that the GASB had cleared for issuance the exposure draft of the implementation guidance update 2026, which focused on the questions and answers related to the subsidy provisions in statement number 103, financial reporting model improvements. Alan Skelton provided a report for the research and as Director of Research and Technical Activities. He shared the technical inquiry statistics, noting a recent increase in the number of questions received due to the implementation of statement number 101, which is compensated absences, and a common occurrence when new standards are implemented is an uptick in some of the inquiries that are received. He also shared about the monitoring activities, particularly around digital assets, along with pre-agenda research, materiality, and post-implementation reviews. Wrapping things up, the next GASAC meeting will be held on June 22nd at the FAF offices in Norwalk. While GASAC meetings traditionally span 2 days, the June meeting will be held on 1 day with the second day reserved for a public forum on the infrastructure assets project. And GASAC members were encouraged to consider providing feedback in that public forum. With that, I'll pause and take any questions.
Questions for Rob? Seeing none, thank you, Rob, so much. We're going to move to the PCC Chair. Jerry, for your report.
Great, thanks, Talia. Thanks for the confidence you've expressed in me by reappointing me for another 3-year term starting in January. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank the employers and firms that the other PCC members belong to. They're making a commitment to financial reporting by allowing some of their most talented people participate in this process is a real service to private company financial reporting. So in your materials, I want to present the 2025 PCC annual report, which summarizes the highlights of what we accomplished in 25 and have continued to work on in early 26. Happy to take any questions about that. The report and the things we have ongoing focus on 3 primary areas. One, engaging with our constituencies of preparers, users, and practitioners to understand what their views are about existing and proposed financial reporting standards. One of our ongoing responsibilities is to look at existing standards and also develop our own agenda for possible adjustments and alternatives that are practical and efficient for preparers while also meeting the needs of users. And finally, to work with the FASB and the FASB staff on an ongoing basis as they develop new standards so that we make sure we're providing advice and feedback that will be relevant to private company stakeholders. During 26, we've continued on that journey. We've had a number of liaison meetings. We've been featured in articles and publications. We've hosted webcasts. And I think we're continuing to fill, the important parts of our mission in 26. That, I'm happy to take questions.
Questions for Jerry? Manju, do you have a question? I saw your mic on. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you.
With that, our next item is the report from the Oversight Committee Co-Chair, Manju. That's why your mic was on. She's getting ready. She's ready to go.
Thank you, Dahlia. The Standard Setting Process Oversight Committee convened yesterday, May 19th in Washington, D.C. for our regularly scheduled meeting. Committee members gathered to review progress, discuss developments, and fulfill their oversight responsibilities. During the session, we received comprehensive reports from both FASB Chair Rich Jones and GASB Chair Joel Black, and FASB Liaison to PCC Sue Cosper. These updates provided valuable insights into their current priorities, emerging challenges, and accomplishments in their respective areas. In addition to these reports, as part of our ongoing commitment to transparency and accountability, the committee reviewed and discussed meetings that trustees observed over the past quarter. The practice ensures that trustees remain actively engaged and well-informed about our standard setting processes. We had, for the first 4 months, we had 8 trustees observe approximately 11 committee meetings or FASB board meetings or committee meetings. Overall, the committee and its participants engaged in meaningful and productive discussions with both FASB and GASB leadership on a range of important topics. These conversations reflected our shared commitment to upholding the integrity and, in fact, effectiveness of the standard setting process. For stakeholders and members of public interested in learning more, a recording of Tuesday's public session is available on our FAF website. Regarding the report from the committee received from FASB Chair Rich Jones and FASB Technical Director Jackson Day. They discussed FASB's progress in the last quarter. Many of these matters have already been covered in FASB Chair Rich Jones' report during this session. Just to summarize, the primary topics reviewed by the Oversight Committee included a concise overview of FASB's active technical agenda projects, highlighting the timing and expected final accounting standards update and upcoming exposure drafts. An update on the 25 agenda consultation, covering the extensive stakeholder outreach and the FASB's ongoing review and analysis of feedback received from that outreach. The committee's anticipation of receiving the agenda consultation report, which will summarize stakeholder input and detail how feedback was considered, along with updates on resulting FASB agenda decisions that the board makes. Also, the committee received an update on PIR, focusing on ongoing monitoring of CECL implementation and stakeholder feedback, including discussions with the Not-for-Profit Advisory Committee in March and the May 12th Public Roundtable. Now, regarding the committee report received from GASB Chair Joel Black and GASB Director Alan Skelton reviewed the main highlights of the past quarter. Again, many of these matters have already been covered in GASB Chair Black's report during this session. The primary topics reviewed by committee included key developments of GASB's technical agenda, with particular attention to the due process activities in the past quarter, notably the issuance of 2 exposure drafts for stakeholder input. Updates to the voluntary digital financial reporting project, with GASB continuing to provide feedback to the taxonomy consultative group as it evaluates different strategies for implementing digital financial reporting, including potential enhancements to taxonomy structure and usability. And finally, progress on its post-implementation review activities, including ongoing work toward the final OPEB PIR report expected by year-end, and continued data collection and survey planning for the fiduciary activities and leases PIRs. And with that, Dahlia, I turn things back to you.
Thank you, Manju. Any questions for Manju? Okay, our next item is the report of the FAF Executive Director, Erin. Erin?
Thank you, Dahlia. It is my pleasure to share with you a summary of key activities at the Financial Accounting Foundation over the last several months. Stakeholder outreach is just as important at the Financial Accounting Foundation as it is at both FASB and GASB. Dahlia Blass and I have spent a great deal of time over the past several months meeting with key organizations and leaders, listening to their perspectives on financial accounting and reporting standards. As of today, we've met with over 70 leaders from regulators, stakeholder groups, international standard-setting bodies, Securities and Exchange Commission being one of those regulators, and Capitol Hill. Dahlia and I are committed to continuing these meetings and making them a regular part of our stewardship of the organization. I would like to publicly thank the leaders and organizations we've met with for taking the time to share with us their views. We greatly value their input to our work and to continue working together. As all of our trustees know, the Appointments Committee has a very tall task this year. The committee is recruiting at this time for a new chair for the FASB, a new chair for the GASB, 3 new members of the FAF Board of Trustees, including 1 governmental trustee, and 1 new member for each of FASB and GASB. In addition to these critically important roles, the Appointments Committee is continually considering qualified candidates for the key advisory councils to both FASB and GASB, as discussed today with the reappointment of Jerry and several other members of the PCC. I am pleased to report excellent progress on all of our searches. The committee has identified highly talented individuals to form the finalist pools for many of these roles. We expect to make public announcements about all of these appointments following our November meeting in Norwalk, Connecticut. Finally, the FAF will be publishing its 2025 annual report, which stakeholders will be able to review at our website, accountingfoundation.org. The report includes our full financial statements for the year, as well as a recap of major activities at both the FASB and GASB during 2025. I encourage all of you, for some really good reading, to view or download the report from our website. This concludes my report, Dahlia, and I'm happy to take any questions from anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. And I cannot stress for all of us the importance of stakeholder engagement and meeting at the FAF level, obviously at the FASB and the GASB level. It's really key to the work that we do. So I'm very grateful to Erin and the staff for arranging all these meetings. It's definitely been fantastic to hear from so many folks who are interested in the work that we do. Okay. Manju, I am back to you. A report from our treasurer, Manju, on our financials.
Thank you, Dahlia. I'm pleased to report that our actual financial performance for the year 3 months ending March 31st is tracking closely to budget, with both revenues and expenses falling in line with expectations. Overall, there was a 33 million increase in net assets, which was driven by the timing of accounting support fee recognition. The annual fees were recognized in the first quarter. The balance sheet shows a decrease in the reserve fund, reflecting working capital needs before FASB accounting support fees are collected. There's also an increase in receivables related to these accounting support fees. But overall, the March performance is very straightforward and in line with our expectations, the 2026 budget. And that concludes my remarks, Dahlia.
Thank you, Manju. And as Erin mentioned, our financial statements are live on our website, publicly available. Transparency is obviously very important. Any questions or comments before I? Okay, seeing none. This is the end of our public session for today's Financial Accounting Foundation's Board of Trustees meeting. Let me remind everyone that our next FAF board meeting is going to be held virtually on Tuesday, August 18th. And thank you again for all of you who have tuned in to the webcast or observed the meeting here in person in Washington, D.C. We wish you a great day. And as I said, that will now conclude. This is the end of our public session. Thank you.